Hey there and welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather Show. Today's real question is, where is all the space weather? We'll talk all about it here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. This is the past, this is yesterday plus today. That's September 23rd and September 24th to date. From the Solar Dynamics Observatory, the AIA instrument featuring ionized helium, 304 angstroms, one of the classic wavelengths that we show on the regs. The most active region is that region in the southeast, moving right toward the center of the solar disk there. That has been the most flare-producing sunspot. And we do have a massive CME occurring as we produce the video in the northwestern limb, which still remains the most likely spot to see a large solar flare. And we'll show you some imagery of that here in a bit. First, if you enjoy the content, take a moment to press the like button. We need your assistance to get the content onto screens. So thanks to all of our new subscribers on YouTube. Cheers. Congratulations on realizing that the channel exists. We're frankly surprised that you found it with the state of affairs on the internet. So again, press like for sure. If you're new to the channel, do yourself a favor and get the world's most comprehensive daily space weather content on your subscription feed by pressing the subscribe button. Press the share button. Leave us a comment, even a derogatory one. We like those just as much as the nice ones. So again, thanks to our new YouTube subscribers in all seriousness. And please help keep the channel in existence by visiting our links. So one of the links that you can find below the video is to our homepage, which is smashomash.com. And welcome to Neo Renaissance. You can find links to our social media, a link to our Discord channel there, a permanent invite. You need an invite to join a Discord channel. Link to the Smash team, which we'll talk about toward the end of the video. Smashomash.com, our homepage. We built a massive web ring for people like you, including merch, including a forum, and including a custom subscription services site, the Smash Team. One of the links you can find below the video is a link to our Amazon shop. It's amazon.com/shop/smashomash. Today's featured list is some items for your bathroom. Did you know you can make a homemade mouthwash out of kosher salt and baking soda? Yeah. Kosher salt and baking soda. It's the ultimate mouthwash to alkalize your mouth. That's just a little tidbit for you there, but a bunch of different products that might be useful to you there in our Amazon shop in the bedroom, bathroom, and beyond list. Again, amazon.com/shop/smashomash. Also below this video, you'll find links to the Hemp Lucid shop, one of our other paid affiliate/sponsors. Thanks to Hemp Lucid and everybody who's picked up merch and who's picked up various products from our paid affiliates and sponsors. We endeavor to keep these videos existent, publicly visible, and free for all to view. Thanks to everybody who has increased the likelihood this will exist and helped to offset our massive annual operating loss. Today's featured product from the merch shop is, and I'm not wearing it today. Today I'm wearing the Smash Team merch. That's only available to our annual paid-up, 1-year gold annual paid-up subscribers. This featured product is May That Solar Wind Be At Your Back. This one was actually a request from one of our viewers. Yeah, we do requests on our merch. Sometimes it features a very high-res image of the sun there from the SDO. That's from July 14th. The ultra-high resolution image there at over 4,000 by 4,000 pixels there. And you can even get that one printed on your back because, again, it's one of the taglines of the channel. May that solar wind be at your back. We try to give out good advice on the channel, and that's just some well wishes for you there. Again, we do requests. Redbubble shop link below the video, as well as on the homepage at smashomash.com. And let's briefly take a look at sunspots. We've seen a little decline in solar activity, and the real question is, once again, where is the space weather? I mean, we're seeing a late arrival for a coronal hole high-speed stream and some coronal mass ejection impacts that never occurred. So there are still a couple more on the way. We'll get to that here momentarily. So there's the SDO intensity gram, and let's see, any major changes with sunspots? Not really, mostly stable there. And keep in mind, we do have this major group approaching the northwestern limb. The likelihood of large solar flares is very high up there. Here's the magnetogram. And again, the most active sunspot group has been this one down here in the, moving right into the center of the solar disk. And let's take a brief look at volcanoes to see what's going on. Shishaldin is showing some activity here. The list starts out with Mount Mayan, producing an unknown volcanic ash plume. Luatolo producing a 7,000-foot ash plume as it explodes. Dukono producing a 7,000-foot ash plume as well. And again, Shishaldin showing a very high level of seismic tremor, an indication that it might create another paroxysm. It's been producing ash clouds between 2 and 15,000 feet. The volcanic alert level remains at orange for Shishaldin, which is, by the way, located in the Aleutian Islands. Headed down to central Mexico there, Popocatépetl producing a 22,000-foot plume of volcanic ash as it explodes. It's a flight level 220, flight level 150 over Guatemala from Fuego. No volcanic ash observed from Sangay. Continuing emissions from Revenador, Sabancaya producing a 24,000-foot ash plume, and no emissions from Villarrica. So that's what's going on for volcanoes, and seismically speaking, it has been very calm over the past 24 hours. Eerily calm for space weather, and quite calm for seismic activity as well. Only a couple quakes of a 5 or greater magnitude, we'll call those out. Starting out with this 5.1 at New Caledonia, north of New Zealand there. Or you could say east of Australia. That 5.1 occurred at 15:51 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. After that, a lull in 5+ magnitude earthquake activity until a 5.1 strikes Indonesia early this morning at 1:27 Universal Time. That one on the shores of the Indian Ocean there, a 5.1 at 1:27 today on September 24th. And that's it. Only 2 5 or greater magnitude quakes in the past 24 hours. And let's head back to space here, back to the SDO. There's yesterday plus today and 171 angstroms, the house favorite. Let us know what your favorite wavelength is from the SDO AIA instrument. Is it the blue 335 angstroms? Is it the green 94 angstroms? Perhaps the turquoise 131 angstroms? Mine is, and I think has always been, the 171 angstroms. And let's talk stats. So we've seen a decrease in the sunspot number and in the radio flux, which is now at 173 solar flux units, so not a major decrease, as we are still ramping our way up to solar maximum. Radio flux now at 173 solar flux units. This is a one-year chart from Solon.info, depicting the radio flux as that black line there. And you can expect continued increases, since again we're not yet at solar maximum, so protracted increases expected to continue over the next year or so. We got a while to go before we get to solar maximum. Here you can see the sunspot number reported there, just under 200. And of course the Belgian reporting is actually higher than that, so we'll get to that here in a moment. Space Weather Enthusiast Dashboard. This is NOAA's forecast for space weather, and NOAA is forecasting some geomagnetic unrest tonight, but it looks like they've downgraded. We never saw the geomagnetic storm we were expecting to see last night. That never arrived. Must have been a CME miss. Also, the coronal hole high-speed stream not here yet. Let's take a look at NOAA's Enlil spiral. And here is a graphical depiction of plasma density and plasma velocity here. You can see multiple CME events there, and it looks like NOAA anticipating those to miss to the north. A glancing blow expected sometime today. So coronal hole high-speed stream, maybe it missed entirely, not sure on that one. We did have one space weather event happen, though, a solar energetic particle event, which we'll show you here momentarily. So that's NOAA's forecast, expecting a CME impact, a significant one, today. Here's NASA's forecast, and NASA would tend to agree, and so would we. So basically, it could be the calm before the solar storm here. So that's NASA's Enlil spiral. And let's take a look at Earth's magnetic moment from space. Again, it is calm, geomagnetically speaking. Solar wind speed is very low, and solar wind density is very diffuse. We'll cover it after we show the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space depicted here. You can see the plasma pressure there becoming more homogeneous as the system tries to reach static equilibrium. As the solar wind is low and slow. So there's our Earth's magnetic moment from space to about 12 Earth diameters. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground, depicting magnetic flux density. And guess what? Doomsday. It's still canceled. Yep, if you're spooked to the pole shift, this should help to unspook you, as it's not showing anything even remotely spooky. The last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And geomagnetism has been calm and steady for days. KP2, it's been in a range between KP 1.3 and KP 3 for 3 days. So very calm geomagnetic conditions. KP2 is the planetary K index. And check out the real-time solar wind. We are seeing a little increase here in the last few minutes, but it's very minor. Solar wind speed here really slow, just over 310 kilometers per second at 312. Solar wind density here quite diffuse at 2.37 protons per cubic centimeter. GOES magnetometers here are smooth for the past 3 days. And if you're wondering where they're magnetometering, the GOES magnetometers are located in a geosynchronous near equatorial orbit at about 23,500 miles of altitude. They're in the outer portion of the outer Van Allen belt. They're very high out there in space. They're properly in space. And let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet next. So Earth is in a North Pole current sheet, and there is a sector boundary crossing coming in several days here. Look at the last image. South Pole current sheet is like maybe 4 days out, 3 or 4 days out, depending on activity in the east. We don't see any new sunspots rising in the east. This is the past 4 days of the heliospheric current sheet, our top view ecliptic plane field plot. And again, Earth is in a North Pole current sheet depicted here in green. Here's our line of sight field plot. Things have been pretty steady over the past 24 to 36 hours. No major changes in terms of sunspots, no major coronal holes opening or anything like that. And here is our line of sight coronal hole plot to move on to that. We are seeing a little uptick in coronal hole activity for the past few days. And you can expect a major uptick in coronal hole activity over the next 2 years. Yeah, because we've been having a very low amount of coronal holes. So low coronal holes in terms of the number of them. Also, they're quite small. Expect to see more trans-equatorial coronal holes in the coming 2 years, which will be geo-effective. They will cause things like geomagnetic storms. So here's yesterday plus today in SDO 211 angstroms. Basically what we've got is we've got North Pole coronal holes around here and South Pole coronal holes up here. Sector boundary crossing is quite close to that large sunspot here, just moving past the center of solar disk. Next, sunspots. And sunspot number has now dropped below 200. It looks like it is now at 190, according to the Royal Observatory of Belgium. That was updated today. 190 is the current sunspot number. And here is the flare probability monitor and so on. By the way, thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. So we do have sunspot 3446 up here in the northeast. That is the newest named group, I think. But besides that, again, mostly stable here for the past 24 hours. And if we stop this, we'll see that it is quite likely for a large solar flare, very likely for a large solar flare, especially at 3445, which has been the most active group. There is still a significant possibility in this group here, 3435 and 3443 in the northwest. So these three areas right here are the likely places to see a large solar flare. I would say especially in the northwestern limb, and of course this is the most active sunspot. Let's take a look at sunspots. So here's the SDO continuum, September 23rd and September 24th to date. So we are seeing a little bit of growth in this group here. Great example of a beta gamma delta class sunspot group. A little bit of growth in this group as well. So two large magnetically complex groups there approaching the limb. A little bit of growth in this sunspot group also. So actually, there is a little bit of an increase there in solar activity over the past 24 hours. And here we've put together the SDO 171 angstroms on the AIA instrument along with the colorized magnetogram on the HMI instrument. Gotta love that one. Showing the polarity of those sunspot features. For example, I would draw your attention to the southern hemisphere. You can see the leading magnetic fields there of those active regions are indeed south pole orientation. The leading magnetic fields of the northern sunspot groups are north pole orientation, showing you the opposite polarity features of sunspots there. Gotta love the 171 plus colorized magnetogram imagery. And let's move on to solar energetic particles and solar flaring, because we, as forecast, did indeed see an SEP. It's a pretty minor one, but there you go. A little bit of an uptick there in the GOES proton flux. So you can expect this to continue. The very high likelihood of seeing additional spikes in the proton flux here is certainly there. Again, we're surprised to have not seen the coronal hole high-speed stream show up. Perhaps it missed Earth entirely, but in any case, there is certainly a magnetic field, a magnetic line channel somewhere in proximity to Earth at the moment. So there's a small spike in the proton flux, and the largest flare of the past 24 hours was at 3:30 this morning, and it was an M4.1. Let's take a look at flares from our SDO perspective. So here's 94 angstroms. That is September 23rd and September 24th to date also. And again, we have multiple regions here that are capable of producing large flares. And again, there is a coronal mass ejection occurring in the northwestern limb. As we produce the video, we will show you that here in a bit. First, 131 angstroms. So there were some M-class events there behind the northwestern limb. Probably no surprise to our regular viewers. And let's take a moment to see what's going on overhead on our star chart. So here is skyandtelescope.org's star chart. Go ahead, head to skyandtelescope.org and make your own. But this is what's going on over our head in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Jupiter setting in the west as Venus is being chased by Mercury and the Sun being chased by Mars and Spica across the ecliptic. That's the current situation. Next, our solar system forecast for heavenly bodies. Here's where things are today. Here's where things will be in a week on October 1st. Moving right along to our astronomy photo of the day. Did you know there's an annular eclipse coming on October 14th to places like Texas? Yeah, it's true. And here is what one looks like. Some spectacular imagery there. The annular eclipse, where the moon is kind of far away from Earth to where it can't fully cover the sun and create a total eclipse, also known as a ring of fire eclipse. apod.nasa.gov is where you can go check that out yourself. And it's time to talk CMEs. Yeah, CMEs. So here are yesterday's images. And yes, I do think that one of those CMEs has an earthly directed component, like we said in yesterday's daily space weather video. We are expecting a CME impact on the 26th, sometime late in the day on the 26th. Because at the beginning of this right here, you see that CME out of the south. I believe that has an earthly directed component. I guess nobody else has modeled it yet, but hey, them's the breaks. Expect a CME late on the 26th to impact Earth, possibly causing geomagnetic storm conditions. It can be very confusing, folks. Here are today's frames, an additional 37 frames from today, and you'll see this huge CME popping off in the northwestern limb. It looks like multiple events there. The first one appears to be behind the solar limb. And we'll show you some more imagery of that here in a minute. First, here's Soho-Lascaux C2 and C3, and you'll see that right at the end there. It's actually two separate events. But they are from the same general location. So here we've zoomed in a little bit closer. So again, you'll see two separate events here. One is from behind the northwestern limb, and the other is a little closer to Earth. That second one is still probably not earthly directed, but it's a little bit farther to the east, in other words, closer. We'll also show stereo A, as we do most days. And feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with the locations of things like Bepi Colombo, the Parker Solar Probe, the Solar Orbiter. Stereo A is depicted by that red circle there, finally moving off to Earth's west. And there you'll see right at the end, difference imagery on the right, raw coronagraph on the left. You'll see right at the end that dual coronal mass ejection happening in the northwest. Our custom videos will make it a little bit clearer as to what's going on, so let's break those out. Here's a 24-hour video with Lascaux C2 and C3 and SDO 193 angstroms. So right at the end of that video, you'll see that coronal mass ejection starting to propagate there. We've also brought up the Proba 2 swap 174 angstroms wavelength, just to add another layer there for you. And don't be surprised to see continued activity up there in the northwestern limb, like large solar flares. So there's just the Proba 2 swap instrument. And then here's 193 angstroms from SDO. So that's the scenario. And we have a massive number of filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Check them out. Totally berserk number of filaments there. I mean, let's bring up the last image here and do a rough count. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. No less than 16 filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, folks. That is a lot of filaments. So some of them are quite huge. This sunspot here, the most active sunspot, does have 2 large filaments both north and south of it. This one has some large filaments associated with it. This one has some large filaments. So there is certainly a very, very high potential for coronal mass ejections, including the Earth-directed kind, to be propagating in the coming 24 hours. Here we've got the grayscale imagery, which will also show prominences. When a filament hangs off the edge, there is a crown prominence up at the northern polar region. Also down at the southern polar region. And expect crown prominences to continue to increase over the next year, since, again, we're like over a year away from solar maximum. So that's what's going on. And by the way, if you want to name filaments after living people, join us over on Twitter. Yeah, Twitter, the place where some sycophants seem to think that censorship has been fixed. I got news for you. Censorship ain't fixed. Censorship has only been as pathetic as it has for the past 3 years. So, I mean, it really reached its peak in about March of 2020, and it's still plateaued for that entire period of time. Alphabet, Apple, Meta, and Twitter, the main providers of censorship and evil around the world. Okay. Seriously, folks, censorship is the world's largest problem currently. It has to be smashed. It's un-American. It's misleading investors. It's unethical. It's unhelpful. It's anti-science. And it's anti-human. So here are the past couple of hours from the GO 16 SUVI. And, yeah, there is a CME propagating as we make the video. So it's on its way out in this sort of a fashion. Not visible there on the GO 16 SUVI. It looks like it has left the building. And it is very unlikely to be earthly directed. So no new earthly directed coronal mass ejections here. And let's move on to bonus features. First bonus feature is the satellite's community dashboard, showing some minor surface charging hazards there in the central Pacific Ocean. That's caused by low-energy electrons, which will build up on the outside of spacecraft. Again, those are minor surface charging hazards, not expected to cause any major communications failures. GO's electron flux here until some space weather arrives, which it could here at any moment, frankly, because of the CME impact. You can expect to see this crater when the coronal mass ejection impacts. And it's pretty imminent at this point, and it should be a major signal. So expect the GO's electron flux here to crater. That will be essentially an erroneous reading as the ionosphere will puff up. The GO's electron flux is measured at the F layer of the ionosphere by the GO's 16 and GO's 18 using radiography. There's the 1-year graph to put it in context. Fairly high levels here of relativistic electrons at the F layer of the ionosphere. There's the forecast model, NOAA expecting a big dip as well. So we agree there. Green boxes are the forecast, yellow diamonds are the observation. Here's the layer where it's measured, the F layer of the ionosphere, one slice of the thermosphere located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. There it is in vibrational frequency. And it's quite normal. Again, not scary, not spooky in any way, not foretelling doomsday in any capacity. If you are looking for the apocalypse in our space weather data, you're not going to find it. As I spent a couple of years going, oh noes, I'm very spooked, the apocalypse is here. Did you know that the end is near is literally the oldest grift? Yeah, the oldest grift. The oldest scam is the end is near. Do what I say now. Make sure you buy my bunker supplies. Otherwise, you may not repent in time for when the end is here. Oh, noes, folks. Yeah, the end is not here. It is not near. Your finest days lie ahead. And yeah, civilization isn't even collapsing, although a lot of people are trying to self-destruct. Fortunately, nature is not helping. Nature is not helping self-destruct. People are doing that all by themselves. Anyway, here's the latest image of the ionosphere. That's 1330 universal time for the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And there's 1330 universal time ionogram. Looking quite normal there. Except, of course, we were expecting space weather to have arrived, where we're seeing a lot of high-frequency anomalies there when we expected low by this point. We also show the total electron content, which is useful for your average plebe, because people use GPSs now instead of directions. Free electrons can cause signal refraction. So this space weather signal is useful to your average noob who uses GPS. It's also useful to those of us who are interested in what's going on in the outer portion of the inner portion of the outer Van Allen belt, the outer plasmasphere, the inner Van Allen belt, the inner plasmasphere, and the ionosphere in terms of free electrons, because that's what it's showing, free electrons from about 12,500 miles of altitude to your handset. That's the distance from your GPS satellite to ground level, and things are looking quite organized with the total electron content. We also show electron content anomaly over North America, and we are seeing some anomalies popping up here. These are not going to be space weather-based signals. These are probably earthly generated signals, since space weather has been so calm. So we are seeing some electron content anomalies here. Let's rock this back. There we're seeing some around eastern Canada. And then some popping up in northern Canada. Some popping up across the Rocky Mountains. They're very minor. And then some more serious ones there around northern Mexico, Baja California, the west coast of the U.S. That is your anomaly from the 10-day average for total electron content. Literally a count of electrons from ground level to your GPS satellite. We'll close out space weather with the latest images of the closest star, and we'll show you the most likely sunspots to produce major flares in their extremely high-res close-up magnetic field glory. So there's a beta gamma delta class sunspot group setting on the northwestern limb. Those kind of sunspots are quite likely to produce large flares. And this sunspot to its south is also beta gamma class. This one down here is beta gamma delta class. So it has a propensity to produce large flares. And last but not least, this group down here has been the most active sunspot over the past 24 hours. Also beta gamma delta class. So there you go. And that is where we will end our space weather content and briefly talk meteorology. Our meteorology segment starts out with a bunch of entrained dust. Yeah, the subtropical Atlantic. It's got entrained dust right now from the Sahara Desert. And so this low right here is about to get hammered as there's a very dense cloud of Saharan dust headed its way. It's going to tamp down that low and smash it into oblivion, into smithereens. Just figured I would briefly talk about Saharan dust, since it's one of the ways we can forecast what tropical lows will actually do. Anyway, here are the Earth's air masses. We'll show ground level and jet streams. There are the surface winds of the eastern world, and happy spring to our viewers from Unda. You've survived another winter. Congratulations. Here are the jet streams for the east, the jet streams for the central world, the surface winds for Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, surface winds of the west, and there are the jet streams. A huge rift in the jet stream here, pulling cold air all the way down beyond the Yucatan toward the equator there. Huge meridional jet stream flows there. A 180-degree bend, jet stream blowing due south across the Florida Panhandle and blowing due north across the Bahamas. Check out the new snow situation. Dudes, new snow. Melt season is officially ended. Check that out. Greenland featuring massive amounts of new snow. So that's 7 inches there. We've got 7 inches over here. Melt season is over, folks. And Greenland is now putting on mass once again. Also seeing some snow forming in the U.S. Yeah, it's pretty minor. It looks like most of it has melted, perhaps. Anyway, that's the new snow map from windy.com. And let's check clouds and fog over the Americas. Low clouds persist there over the eastern Pacific there. Huge amount of low clouds. Dreary skies for days and weeks over the eastern Pacific. The southeastern Pacific, that is. And there is clouds and fog. And here's our weather.gov map. We've got a lot of hard freeze warnings and frost advisories and so forth in Idaho and Wyoming. I think we've got heat advisories in Texas at the same time, so drastic temperature variations happening across the U.S. as fall sets in. Weather.gov is where to go to get your weather warnings. Weather.gov, there are too many counties for us to cover. We showed you the key, we showed you the warnings, and here comes some forecasts. It's the GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast. Heavy rains coming to the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, up the coast of Oregon, and Washington. Also British Columbia seeing some snow and heavy, heavy precipitation. That is the GFS 72-hour forecast. And here is the total accumulated precipitation forecast, expecting 6 inches of rain in portions of Washington. And also BC. Vancouver is going to get kaplastered. Look at the rain. Rain and heavy snow there hitting British Columbia and Vancouver. Dag! That is berserk. Also heavy rains coming to the mid-Atlantic states. And anyway, there's the map. It's total accumulated precipitation in inches based on the GFS 72-hour model. We show 3-day forecasts because they're accurate. Beyond 3 days, you need people like me to tell you what's going to happen because the models are wrong. Anybody forecasting out beyond 3 days is probably relying on models. And it's not likely to be accurate beyond 3 days. And some huge temperature swings happening here. So this is your temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius, the same model, the GFS 72-hour. So some huge swings in temperature there in various spots across the U.S. And let's close this thing out. We don't want it to be too lengthy. Here's the lightning mapper. We did have some lightning here across Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa, especially. Also a little bit in Louisiana. And here's the current situation from lightningmaps.org. Next time you hear thunder, it's highly recommended. And we do have some terrestrial strikes. Where are they rolling in? Looks like around Texarkana. Texarkana there, some minor thunderstorm activity. Eastern Europe seeing some lightning. By the way, if you enjoy the content, help to keep it existent, publicly visible, and free for all to view by becoming a member of the Smash Team. We even send out email alerts to bronze level Smash Team members. Yeah, bronze level, which costs you $0 a month. If you get the gold annual paid up subscription, you'll get complimentary merch. We don't call it free. It's complimentary. It's almost like getting 4 months of a gold membership for free. The gold is $9.99 a month. The silver is $2.99 a month. Help support the channel. That way these videos are brought to you in part by the Smash Team, as well as by Smash staff and I, at massive personal risk and expense. Help to offset our operating losses by becoming a member of the Smash team. We'll close out with Doppler radar, clouds and fog, and water vapor. There is the situation for the full 50-state view, and we will be focusing on the lower 48 view. Heaviest storms right now moving across Arkansas into Mississippi as we make the video. Here is clouds and fog. There you can see that system. It is pretty strong. And here is water vapor. There is a powerful low here around the border between the Dakotas and Minnesota. However, it's not got a lot of moisture in it. It's pretty dry. But there is some moisture there swirling around Wisconsin into Minnesota and around southern Canada. Anyway, here's a recap. Ground-based Doppler radar systems depict vertical motion in the air column. Things like water droplets and ice crystals. This satellite-based system depicts infrared radiation emitted by clouds and fog. It's 3.9 micrometer infrared radiation from the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite, and here is water vapor. A different portion of the infrared spectrum. It depicts all the water vapor. Atmospheric river showing up at the Pacific Northwest, and that's where we'll close things out. Thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on Realize the Channel Exists. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. Don't forget to press like, subscribe, share, etc. We'll see you soon. And in the meantime, may that solar wind be at your back.